The following program is a production of Pioneer Public Television. Major funding for your legislators is provided by Move Minnesota, a statewide coalition fighting for a 10-year commitment to fixing our dire transportation needs. A safe, reliable transportation system strengthens Minnesota's economy. Join the conversation at movemn.org. Additional funding provided by Flaherty and Hood has provided quality legal and legislative services to clients in Greater Minnesota for more than 20 years. Our legal team focuses on municipal employment and environmental law, while our lobbyists energetically represent clients at the state capitol. Online at flaherty-hood.com. MAPE members, making Minnesota Clean Water's safe communities, quality education, and veterans care happen. We work hard for Minnesotans. Live from St. Paul, Minnesota, we welcome you to the 35th session of Your Legislators, a roundtable discussion featuring state lawmakers who are prepared to answer your questions and discuss important issues affecting the citizens of Minnesota. Now, here is your moderator for tonight's program, Barry Anderson.
Good evening and welcome to this week's version of Your Legislators. We're delighted that you have joined us. We have with us a somewhat truncated group of legislators because the governor has called and our Democratic Senator and Democratic Representative are going to be busy visiting with the governor. But nonetheless, we're going to have a program for you, and we invite you to call in with your questions to our distinguished panel of two guests that will carry the load for all four. I'm sure they'll be able to handle the questions that you have. My name is Barry Anderson. I'll be your host and moderator this week and in all the weeks that follow until the legislature goes home. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about when that might be. We begin this week unraveling the mysteries of St. Paul by introducing our panel, as we do each week. And joining us this week, first from District 32 in Cambridge, Senator Sean Nenow. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, you did.
All right. I'm getting better at these things. Senator Nenow, tell your viewers a little bit about yourself, where you're from, your work in the legislature, and so forth.
Sure. Well, I was first elected in 2002. I took a 4-year break in between there, so I haven't served continuously since then, but was reelected in 2010. I represent roughly Chisago County and Isani County. I'm on the Health Committee, the Education Committee, the Finance Committee. I'm the GOP lead on the E12 Education Committee.
And also joining us, a frequent guest on our program, been with us many times from District 31B in Cedar, Minnesota, Representative Tom Hackbarth. Representative Hackbarth, good to see you again. Tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you for having us, Barry. And I represent northern Anoka County, the northeastern portion of northern Anoka County. It's the city of East Bethel, Ham Lake, Columbus, Linwood Township, and parts of Andover and Oak Grove. I'm just beginning my 10th term. I've served on the Environment and Natural Resources Committees as long as I've been there, and I'm currently the new chair of the new committee, Mining and Outdoor Recreation.
Well, let's begin with something that was in the news today. It's been in the news the last couple of days, and that is there was an announcement that there's been an agreement on the allocation of space in the new Senate office building and in the Capitol building. Senator Nenow, I'll call on you, irrespective of whether we should or should not build the Senate office building, which I understand was something of an issue in the campaign. Nonetheless, we have this question about space allocation. Tell our viewers a little bit about how that got resolved.
Well, what the final decision was, and there had to be an agreement between the governor and the House and the Senate, and then, of course, the Department of Administration had to sign off on it to make sure that it was a proper arrangement that would befit our grand capital. But what ended up was 4 offices in the Capitol for state senators. Right now, all of the majority members have offices in the state Capitol, and the minority members are in the lower level of the state office building, which is actually a House building. When the new Senate office building is completed, all but those 4 senators will have offices over there, and the 4 offices, as I understand it, will be released for the 4 top-ranking majority lead type senators.
So they would be the majority leader, assistant majority leader, that sort of thing?
Correct. That's my understanding.
All right. We were talking, Representative Hackbarth, about space allocations. The public may not be aware of this, but for many years, the House members have been in the state office building, and I think I think you were telling me they're all there. Is that right?
Correct. All the state representatives have offices in the state office building, and the minority party from the Senate is in the lower level of that same building, and they'll all be in the new Senate office building. But yeah, forever, as long as we've had that state office building, that's where the House members have been.
And as a consequence of this remodeling project that's underway, it's really quite an impressive effort. I had a chance to get a little tour of some of the areas that they're working on. We have stonemasons that have international qualifications working on this historic monument. It's really pretty interesting. But as a consequence of this, I understand there will be more public spaces in the Capitol building, more meeting spaces in the Senate office building and elsewhere, and generally a more usable building. And I don't know who of you can confirm that for me, but let's start with you, Representative Hackbarth.
Well, and that's absolutely true. All of the spaces that the majority Senate, the majority in the Senate, all the offices are in the state Capitol building now. And that's all being renovated. They will have to move out and move into the new building. So that new space mostly will be open to the public. There'll be new bathrooms and all of those kinds of things. So if anybody's been to the Capitol lately, it is really difficult to get around that building right now. About all you can do is maneuver through these new hallways that were made with just the sheetrock that's up, and you can get to the two chambers. You can get to the Senate chamber, you can get to the House chamber, but that's about it right now. You can't get to the rotunda. So if you're thinking about coming to visit the Capitol, you're not going to see much but construction.
I know that they have, we've moved all of our oral arguments from the Capitol. We're over there the first week of the month usually, and we're now all in the Judicial Center building. When we do go over there now through the tunnel, it's a good thing they have signs up because we'd get lost otherwise. Because
even the tunnel area is very, very tricky to get around.
All right, well, enough about buildings and renovations and remodeling, and let's go to our questions from our viewers. We have two viewers from Forest Lake that raised DNR questions, and I'm going to put them together and invite both of you to answer them. One is concerned about whether or not there's going to be a plan in place at the end of the session to compensate producers for timber wolf depredation to livestock. And the second one is also from Forest Lake, concerned about the quality of fishing and deer hunting, and particularly concerned about the decline in the number of deer, noting a diminishment to 2 deer per square mile. What's going on about that? What can we do about it? So, wolves and deer. Who wants to? Let's start with you, Representative Hackbarth. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that question. Maybe I know the person from Forest Lake. Some of the Forest Lake addresses are in my district. Also, we're going to be trying to build a new bridge, Highway 9723 bridge, right near Forest Lake, over 35W. So we're working on that this year too. But the wolf issue, we'll start with that. We just had a hearing last week with wolves. Actually, it was Tuesday of this week, and we brought a number of different people in, the DNR and Dr. Meach. He's the foremost expert on wolves. And when we're talking about depredation from wolves, there's no money right now. We're out of money in the state of Minnesota. There's no federal program. With this judge's decision that came down from Washington, D.C., put the wolf back on the endangered species list. We no longer have a hunting season for wolves in the state of Minnesota. We no longer have a trapping season for wolves in Minnesota, and there's no federal programs to take care of problem wolves in the state of Minnesota either. So, this decision affects Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. And in Michigan and Wisconsin, maybe in each state, they might have 600 wolves in each state. But in Minnesota, we have closer to 3,000 wolves just in the northern part of the state of Minnesota. So without any kind of controls over this issue in northern Minnesota, this is going to be devastating not only to the deer population, the moose population, but to ranchers and farmers in northern Minnesota. This is going to be very, very difficult for our folks, and we've got to do something. Minnesota cannot do anything. But this new decision that this judge made, this is a federal crime if you shoot a wolf now or if you kill a wolf. Only if your life is in danger can you kill a wolf in the state of Minnesota with this new decision. So this is a very, very devastating issue. There's nothing that the state of Minnesota can do. The only thing we can do is try to appeal the case. That's going to take years to try to settle that. And I encourage U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to pursue that. But in the meantime, I hope that our Minnesota delegation will be working on trying to take the wolf off the endangered species list through federal legislation. So I hope that's the direction we're going to go. We also want them to work on getting some money into a federal program into the state of Minnesota so we can handle depredation issues.
We should ask about the deer issue.
Yeah, we can talk about that too.
Okay, why don't we do that, and then we'll ask Senator Nino what he thinks.
No, I've been hunting in Lake of the Woods County, right maybe a half a mile from the lake itself, since 1970. And deer hunting in Lake of the Woods has always been tremendous. Very, very good deer hunting. It's been getting worse and worse for sure the last 10 years. The last 3 years, I haven't seen a deer from my stand. It used to be that I could go out deer hunting and sit on my stand, and you could almost pick and choose which deer you wanted to shoot. You can't do that anymore. Like I said, the last 3 years, I haven't seen a deer from my deer stand. This is getting bad. And I think part of the problem, there's a number of different issues. I think the DNR has to be responsible for part of the problem because they allowed way too many. We had, you could buy a deer hunting license and you could shoot either sex. And before that, we had a lottery where you could apply for an antlerless permit to shoot a antlerless deer. But then the deer population started growing, so they had shoot either sex, plus you could buy bonus tags. So in some instances, you could shoot 5 deer in one season. So that was devastating to the population. Plus, we already talked about the wolf population. As the wolves are getting more and more numerous, that's a huge issue. One thing that's very evident to me, we keep talking about the moose disappearing. There are some diseases that the wolves or that the moose get. There's some tick issues. There's some worm on the brain issues. Particularly in northwestern Minnesota, the wolves are going, or the moose are going away. Particularly more about the worm on the brain, but the wolves have been taking the calves, and that's a huge, huge problem. And that's really kind of the smoking gun, I believe, why we don't have any moose in the north central and the northeastern part of the state anymore. So I think the wolves are a problem. I think the DNR has been an issue with giving out too many tags. And so now we've got some other issues going on. This has to be addressed. We're going to have a hearing on that on February 11th about the deer population in the state of Minnesota.
Any thoughts on the deer and the related DNR issues?
Well, a little bit. I used to, for years, I was on the Environment Committee in the Senate. I haven't been in recent years, but I haven't heard whether there's going to be any proposals or not, but I will tell you that where the moose are is where the leadership in the Senate represents. So you very well might see some proposals and initiatives to try to get some of these things dealt with and taken care of, because it is very real for the people that are in leadership positions in the Senate, many of them.
All right, very good. Viewer from Young America wants us to talk about transportation. The roads are horrendous in her area. Thinks semi-trucks should be made to pay more since she thinks they damage the roads more. We've got questions about the gas tax. Some are for it and some are against it. And we've got a viewer from Todd County who thinks that rural areas don't have buses and light rail and shouldn't have to pay as much to support those modes of transportation. That should cover the waterfront. So let's talk about transportation. Senator Nino, we'll start with you.
Well, I've never generally been supportive of a gas tax. I think there's other ways we could find resources to put into our infrastructure, but particularly for someone who represents a rural, ex-urban district like I do, the people that I represent are driving. It is not uncommon to drive 60 miles one way to get to work, and that is just a killer. To add another 10 or 12 or 15, whatever the gas tax would be that the proposal would be. I don't see much support for that from the people that I represent. Some do. Obviously, there's both sides to every issue. When you're representing 30 or 60 or 70,000 people, there's at least that many opinions. There is, especially when you get more out of the core metropolitan area, you get out into areas like where I represent, the exurbs and the suburbs in rural Minnesota, and even in some of the suburban areas where you represent, the people don't want the trains. There are certain corridors where they make sense, but what they're looking for is good, reliable roads that are taken care of in the wintertime and that they can drive on in the summertime. And that's what I'm hearing from certainly from the people that I represent and from probably the majority of Minnesota. But the challenge we're going to face there in the Senate is the transportation chairman is from the heart of Minneapolis, and they love trains down there. So we'll see what the House can do.
Well, I don't think that you're going to see a gas tax increase out of this legislature. I just don't see it happening. I know that everybody's trying to keep their powder dry and not say that they're going to pass a tax or a gas tax or a sales tax at the wholesale level, those kinds of things. But I just don't see it happening. I just don't see the appetite in the majority of the House. It's not going to happen. Now, it could come down to some kind of negotiated deal at the end of session, but I don't think it will. But this is going to be the contentious issue in the session, and how we're going to get out of this budget situation at the end of session. It will come down to transportation and what kind of a package we're going to have. Now, in my area, with outer ring suburbs, just south of Senator Nino's area, just recently, just this past fall, we have, for the first time, buses out to my district, and it's an express bus that comes up Highway 65 up to as far as East Bethel. Mm-hmm. It stops at the East Bethel Theater, and people just love it. They love it, and I think they would even pay more to continue riding this bus. It's kind of an experiment right now, but these folks love that bus, and they don't want to see it go away. And those are the kind of things that we should be doing. Not trains, more buses, fix the roads, make lanes for buses. That's the direction we should be going. It's much cheaper. We shouldn't be doing the trains. And that's what I hear from my constituents.
On the question of this viewer from Young America was concerned about trucks. Has there been discussion about trucks and the damage they do to the roads, and what, if anything, do we do about that?
I'd like to elaborate on something that federal legislation did to the city of Minneapolis, and I don't know if people are really realize what's happening, but they closed the lock and dam, or they're going to close the lock and dam in North Minneapolis. This is going to be a huge problem.
And that's as a result of the invasive species issue.
Well, they use that as an excuse. Right. They use that as an excuse, and I've been working on the invasive carp issue for a long time. We could have put up some electric carp barriers that do work. They've been put in a number of different locations in the state of Minnesota, and carp are not getting through those electric barriers. These will work at the lock and dams. They've been proven to work. We could have put these in, very inexpensive. Instead, they took a different route. You know, they closed the lock and dam not to keep the invasive carp out, but more to turn North Minneapolis and the river frontage along in North Minneapolis into a park. And that's really what they want to do, and that's the ultimate goal. So there was federal legislation that closed the lock and dam. Unheard of. Unheard of. I talked to federal legislators that said this will never happen. I said this is the direction they're going to go. Watch out for it. But they did it anyway. So now that lock and dam is closed, or going to be closed, and that's going to put, if you know what's located north of that lock, it's the Condurator is up there where they do the metal crushing and shredding. All of that work is going to go up on, not in barges anymore, but now up onto the road. And then more importantly is the gravel that's there. That aggregate is now going to be coming up onto the roads and pounding the heck out of those roads, and that's going to be a huge cost to the state of Minnesota. Not just, it's going to be destroying the roads in Minneapolis, it's going to be destroying the roads in Minnesota, and I don't think anyone thought about that at the time, but that's what we've got, and that's what we're going to be dealing with now, is all of those truckloads of aggregate, all those truckloads of that shredded metal now up on the roads. It's going to be devastating.
And nothing the legislature is likely to do about it in this session.
Well, you know, I think those folks have come in and talked to me. They would like to relocate, and but because of the federal legislation and because of the city of Minneapolis and Minneapolis Park Board want this to take place, they're looking for some help to relocate. And I think we should do something like that. Otherwise, it's going to cost us a lot more money in road repairs.
All right, well, interesting. We'll see where that goes. Viewers from Lester Prairie and Duluth want to talk about property taxes. Lester Prairie wants to know whether or not there's going to be any property tax reform this session. In Duluth, viewers concerned about whether or not the legislature might pass a bill to freeze state property taxes for senior citizens. What's going on, if anything, with property taxes? Senator Nino?
Well, you know what's fascinating is last budget, when we had the DFL was in charge of both the Senate and the House, and they put significant amounts of additional money into local government aid, which is supposed to buy down property taxes. And they gave local governments new taxing authority, a wheelage tax. I think we created the transportation districts where cities can tax for transportation districts for road improvements, and a number of different things. And what we were told is this is going to keep property taxes from increasing. But what happened was exactly the opposite. So the problem that we have is apparently it is never enough. And so I don't know what the legislature can do other than passing a mandate that says you can't raise property taxes. I don't know what the appetite is for that, to put that kind of mandate on the locals. But the legislature in the last session did do what this caller seems to be asking for, is give us some help to keep our property taxes down, but the local governments chose to increase taxes across the state. This is not isolated to certain areas. Statewide, all over the place. Where I represent, they went up. We got the wheelage taxes, et cetera, everywhere else in the state. So it really is going to come down to local voters talking to their local elected officials and say what's up and hold them to account or make some changes.
Well, and Senator Nino is exactly right. The Democrats have been very, very popular when it comes to property taxes and keeping property taxes down, and they like to brag about that. But this is exactly what happened, is what Senator Nino said. We increased local government aid, so local governments are getting more money, but they have such an insatiable appetite for spending that they just keep spending more. Property taxes had to go up. So just the opposite is happening. You're absolutely right, Senator Nino, and I'm getting this complaint all the time. One thing about the wheelage tax that you mentioned, we now made that a statewide thing that counties can do this. But the interesting thing is, in Anoka County, where I'm at, the county commissioners actually took off the wheelage tax. They had come to the legislature to get that put on earlier, and the county commissioners actually, when we did that, we passed it for statewide, our county actually removed it. So I'm proud of those folks for doing that.
We have a viewer who has heard that the legislature is considering decreasing benefits for people with disabilities. Is that true? What does the panel think about that? Viewer thinks that this might be a position taken by the Republican majority in the House or the Republican minority in the Senate. I haven't heard anything about this. What do you know about that, Representative?
I've not heard of anything like that at all. As a matter of fact, not on that issue, but back to senior citizens and income taxes, for example. One thing that I forgot to mention was that there are a couple of bills at the legislature now in the House. I don't know if they're introduced in the Senate, but to gradually take the income tax off of Social Security in increments, slow increments. And I think that's something that we should be doing, and I think that's probably going to pass, at least in the House. So I think that's a good thing to be doing, and that will help in that regard.
I do serve on the Health and Human Services Committee in the Senate. I have not heard of any proposal of that sort. Obviously, I serve in the GOP caucus, and I've not heard of any proposal of that sort in our caucus. And
I haven't heard of anything like that in the House either.
And there is, I actually signed on as a co-author to that bill in the Senate. I think it phases out the tax on Social Security over 6 years, I believe.
So we have had questions in previous weeks about compensation for people working in nursing homes and those kinds of issues, which I think would go through your committee, if I'm recalling correctly.
Health and Human Services.
Yes. And can you talk a little bit about where nursing home funding, particularly in rural areas, is going?
Well, I just met with some of the lobbyists today with the Long-Term Care Initiative, looking at some of those issues, what they're pushing for. And I'm probably supportive of this proposal, is a dramatic reform of how we fund nursing homes. Not based on, right now it's based basically on geography. If you're in certain areas, you get certain reimbursement rates, and other areas, you get other reimbursement rates. They're trying to change that to something that's more outcome-based, based on quality of care, which is what we should all be looking for. That creates competition. It makes you want to do a better job for the customers that you're serving if you're a nursing home, and that's a good thing. That has a significant price tag, but not undoable. What does have a much larger price tag is for other care providers. They're looking for about a 5% increase, and that has upwards of a $500 million price tag, and that's fairly significant. So we'll see where that goes. That's all going to have to be decided by the budget committees and the committee chairs. And on Tuesday, the governor will release his budget, and we'll see if he makes that a priority. I don't know.
Any thoughts on that, Representative Hackbarth?
I'm not on those committees. I haven't seen any of those things.
We'll
so
treat Senator Eno as our expert on that for
Yeah,
this
absolutely
evening.
is.
We have a viewer who's annoyed at us because there are no Democrats on the panel tonight. My apologies. We have a staff of folks who were on the phone most of today trying to line people up. And we are very grateful to the legislators who agreed to join us in the evening when the work of the legislature is done. They'd like to go home, but they come in here and spend an hour with me and an hour with our viewers. In this particular case, we couldn't find any Democrats who could join us this evening.
And we'd love them to have them here. Iron sharpens iron and all of that.
And Barry, I should tell you, too, that in the Minnesota House with the new Republican majority, our schedule now on Mondays, we have Ways and Means at 10 o'clock, but the rest of the committees don't meet until noon on Monday. And then it's the new family-friendly legislature, we try to call it. And then we're all done on Friday. So folks on Thursday night or Thursday afternoon, when they're done with committee, we don't meet on Friday.
Right.
So they're out of here. They're on their way home.
And so and that makes even more significant that the commitment that all of the legislators in both parties have made to join us each Thursday evening.
Absolutely.
So sorry we didn't have the full panel with you tonight, but we will have them for you. We'll have full panels the rest of the year, we hope, at least till we get to the end of the session, and then, of course, all bets are off because you never can tell what's going to happen there. So a viewer wants to talk about K-12 funding and where that might go. And I guess we should say, pre-K, too, because that's part of the discussion as well. Who wants to take that question? Where's that likely to go? Senator Nina, we'll start with you.
Well, I would expect that you would see some increase in the funding. I also would expect, particularly with the new majority in the House and being much more of a rural majority, that we're going to see some significant discussions about funding equity, because there's some real challenges there and some grand discrepancies in who's getting what. I mean, you hate to pick on Minneapolis, but they're an easy target. I mean, they're getting $14,000, $15,000 from the state. You have other districts that are literally getting less than half of that. And that's a concern, and that's a problem. But I think you'll see some increase in the K-12 funding. Just yesterday, I believe it was, in the Senate E-12 committee, we heard the proposal for universal pre-K.
And we have a question from a viewer here who's very much in favor of that and thinks we should do that. And so let's talk about that.
Well, there was some sticker shock on that. It was almost $600 million to do that. And I highlighted the fact in committee that one proposal was probably, it was at least as much and probably more than all of the new money we put into every grade in the last budget, just that one proposal. So I think it seems that the Democrat majority is kind of walking back away from that, because to do that and to try to do right by education funding, give a little boost here and there, I can't see how they can do both of those.
As I'm entering just starting my 10th term, and as long as I've been there, I've never seen where we haven't given education, K-12 education, more money. And I'm sure that's going to happen. When the Republicans are in the majority, it's usually on the formula.
Yep.
And I think that'll probably happen. I think you're going to see maybe some policy reforms. I don't know what those are. I don't serve on that committee, but talking in our caucus, it looks like there'll be some policy reforms in K-12 education. But I'm sure there will be an increase on the formula.
Yeah, and I can assure you that certainly coming out of the Senate Republican caucus, you're going to see a strong focus on quality, on outcomes, on equity, on flexibility, innovation. I am actually, I spoke with your budget chair today. She wanted to get together, and I wanted to get together. We're going to be doing that next week, as well as Sandra Erickson. She's the chair of the Education Innovation Committee. I expect that you will see some actually fairly significant innovative approaches to try to look at what some of the real problems that we have in our education system. As good as we are in Minnesota, we have some real problems, and we need to get our hands around that and try to do something different to try to get those addressed.
So when we're talking about education, one of the questions that comes up from time to time is the question of school choice, and we have a viewer from that great Minnesota community, Unidentified Town, who wants to know what the legislature is doing to expand or provide school choice, and if there's going to be any discussion of that in this session. Senator Nina, start with you.
Yes, there will be. I just met with somebody today that is representing a coalition for school choice. They've got a couple of proposals that will be put forward. They're hoping to be able to get them passed in the House. That's one of the things I'll be talking to your chairs about to see what the likelihood of that happening is. And the Senate will be talking about that. I wouldn't put any money on seeing it pass through the Senate because of the leadership that we have there, and they've not been receptive of that in the past. But hopefully we will have a good discussion on that. Hopefully we can get some things passed through the House so it can come to the table and we can talk about what that would look like. In my opinion, when you look at some of the problems we have, and again, like I say, I hate to pick on Minneapolis, but and St. Paul, they have one of the worst achievement gaps in the country. I think Los Angeles might be worse. Other than that, it's us. And they have a graduation rate of about half. Those are bad numbers. And that's one of the problems I referenced earlier, where we have some real problems in Minnesota. And you're talking tens of thousands of students in that school district. And so we have to figure out what are some options, because what we've been doing for these children is not working. I think educational choice is one of them. For example, when you look at the Minneapolis School District, about 30%, maybe 1 in 3, maybe a little less than that, of every student in the Minneapolis district opts out of the traditional public system. They either open enroll into a neighboring district, or they go to a charter school, or they go to a private school. So essentially what you have is every student that can get out is getting out right now. That's a huge percentage because they've got problems. And this could be one of the pieces of the solution in dealing with that there. But we do have other challenges statewide as well.
Well, and I know in St. Paul, for example, they have a number of immersion schools that are full, overflowing.
Yes.
And people are taking advantage of that. I know that, when I first started many years ago, back in the late 90s, I think Arnie Carlson at the time was the governor. He proposed that vouchers for folks in Minneapolis and St. Paul to send their kids to alternative schools, private schools, for example. And that would be a huge benefit to those folks. We should at least start something like that with those folks.
We have a viewer from Alexandria who raises a question about Governor Dayton's proposal that a 50-foot buffer strip be established around all public waters in the state in order to protect the state's water resources. For those viewers who missed this, there was a terrific article. I'm not endorsing the program. I'm just saying that Dennis Anderson in the Star Tribune did a great piece on the program and what the arguments for it and so forth. What does our panel think about that? Senator Nino?
I don't think you'll see that happen. I mean, even the Agriculture Commissioner was not real positive on that. Rural Minnesota is going to look at that and be very skeptical. Even you get into the metropolitan area around the lakes, I don't know how much lake owners, just anecdotally, one of my colleagues was telling me about one of their more wealthy neighborhoods that they have where the city decided that they weren't going to mow the grass around the lakes, and that lasted for about 2 months until all the neighboring houses said, wait a second, we don't like the way this looks. I'd be a little bit surprised to see if that actually gets passed through the legislature, but I don't know, Tom, that's more in your bailiwick there.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about the issue. This happened at the governor gave a speech at a DNR roundtable last Friday. Every year the DNR has a roundtable where they get all the hunting and fishing groups together, and they talk about various issues that they might be tackling in the upcoming session, things that might need to change, etc., or that they might want to see changed. So every year they do this early on in the session, and this last Friday was that roundtable. And the governor gave the speech and made that statement. I don't support that, and it's a huge problem, even though I'm a big hunter and fisherman, and it was supposed to appeal to the hunting and fishing folks, I believe. And it probably does to Pheasants Forever and maybe Ducks Unlimited and some of those folks, but not to all the hunting and fishing groups. Farmers have got to be devastated by hearing this. And like you said, the Ag Commissioner is not happy about it. Farmers Union, Farm Bureau is not happy with this situation. This is really kind of devastating. A few years ago we've had this discussion, and the ag groups got together with some of these sporting groups and some of the environmentalists, and we came to a compromise, and it's 15 foot right now, 1 rod. I think that's 16 feet. Is that 16 feet a rod, I think? So I think that's the setback right now from ditches for a buffer, and from the lakes and streams and things like that. It's a 16 feet, and now they're going to triple that. So This has been a negotiated deal already. Now he just throws this out there, and people are all jumping on board with it. It just can't happen. You can't enforce it, for one thing. Plus, the most important thing is it's a taking of property rights. That's the real issue. Folks can't farm any closer than 50 feet of a ditch, for example. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. We've already got the 15 or 16-foot setback. We just can't go there. It's unenforceable for another thing. I mean, are we going to pay people not to farm that close to a ditch or a stream or a river for taking their property? Or are we going to have an army of folks that are going to go out every year and make sure that farmers, some kind of a police action against farmers that are plowing their field too close to a ditch? It just can't happen. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, the challenge for agriculture in rural Minnesota is if you've got hundreds of acres of farmland and you've got a river that runs right through it and you got to go 50 feet on either side, suddenly you're taking a tremendous amount of acres.
My math skills are limited, but I can add 50 and 50.
Right.
That's 100 feet.
Yeah.
So has anyone signed on to this bill or offered it as a bill, or is this a?
I haven't seen any legislation.
This is mostly talk.
I haven't seen anything.
Yeah. All right. Well, so then the question, we move from the DNR questions to questions involving higher education and what might happen in this session. There are proposals, of course, from both MnSCU and University of Minnesota, and there has been some discussion about tuition freezes and things like that. Let's start with you, Representative Hackbarth. Higher education, what's going on there?
You know, when I first graduated from high school back in 1970, we had a Anoka Tech Center in Anoka, and School District 11. I could have went to tech school for free, and President Obama has brought that idea back again. I think Senator Bach is now on board with doing something like that, but this is going to be very, very expensive. If we hadn't included those tech centers in the MnSCU framework to start with, I mean, we could have kept doing that possibly, but that would have fallen on the property taxpayers in those districts. But that might have been a good idea to keep doing that. Also, a number of years ago, we used to have shop class in high school. We just don't have those shop classes like we used to have before. And I think that's been the result of some legislation that has come forward, too. I think Senator Stump, for example, was kind of championing getting some of those things taken out so they could spend the money on some other things. Unfortunately, I love Senator Stump, but he was working on those issues. That was the wrong direction, I feel, for our state to go. But we had shop classes, and now we don't have those anymore. So I think we have to get back to those things, have those shop classes, some technical classes in high school, do those kinds of things, as opposed to jumping in head first. You know, it's nice to make some statements that we should have free technical education for 2 years, but it comes with a huge price tag, and that's going to fall on the property taxpayers and the income taxpayers of the state of Minnesota, and I don't know that we want to go there.
Well, and that's really what it's going to come down to. I referenced the universal pre-K before, nearly $600 million. You can imagine what it would cost if you had 2 years of free college. I just don't know how they, as much as, and I'm going to sound partisan here, but as much as the Democrats like to spend money, they can only spend so much, and they have to prioritize. Where I think maybe you could really make some headway and do some of the things that you're talking about here is taking a look at vocational classes and letting, right now we have post-secondary option where students are in high school, they can take PSEO, they can go to the local college, or they can take college in the school. I think we should look more at vocational classes, offering those options to high school students. We have a tremendous need in our economy for those skilled tradesmen. And if you ever get out to manufacturing companies, they have a hard time finding people to hire, qualified, quality workers to hire. The jobs are out there. Not everyone is going to need or want a four-year college degree. And you can make good money as an electrician or as a welder or a machinist. My father was a machinist. That's what he did for his whole life.
Exactly.
And there's tremendous opportunities, and I would hope that we would take some more look at that. That's one of the things that I've tried to do a little bit over the years, and I would like to see us take a look at again this session. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, we're just not preparing the kids for those kinds of jobs anymore.
Interesting article in the Wall Street Journal about 10 days or so ago about a welder coming out of a family academics, essentially. Kind of mom and dad are scratching their heads and wondering about this, and of course it's turned out to be a great career choice for him and for the family as well. So it's confirmation of the story that you're telling us here. Let's talk a little bit about the requests that the University of Minnesota and MnSCU are going to be presenting to the legislature, and what might happen sort of more globally with higher education. What do you think, Senator Eno?
I haven't seen what they're proposing yet. I mean, every year we get a whole laundry list of here's the projects. Yeah, here's the projects that they want us to fund and bond for, and higher education asset preservation, or HEAPR as it's known. I haven't seen it. I expect that we'll see that, and we'll have some discussion on it, and probably do some things. I would expect that the U and MnSCU will make a big point out of the fact that they froze tuition because we gave them a lot of resources, and try to push for something like that again, but I haven't heard yet.
Yeah. I don't sit on that committee either, but I've heard some of these things too. I'm sure they'll have an increase in funding, but it's not going to be what they expect.
So when we talk about the possible bonding issues, of course, bonding questions normally are dealt with in the even-numbered year of the session.
Used to be normally dealt with.
Well, yes. We're talking here political science theory. The reality is that in most years, in recent years, we've had at least a small bonding bill in the odd-numbered session. Do we see that again? And if so, what might it be aimed at? Representative Hackbarth?
I've not heard in our caucus about putting any kind of a bonding bill together for this year. Mm-hmm. That's not to say that it's not going to happen. It very well could happen. But I think we're focusing on the bigger bonding bill and talking about using those dollars for transportation infrastructure, roads, bridges, those kinds of things, as opposed to raising any kind of a gas tax. Back to transportation issue, as long as we're talking about bonding and using that bonding money for those things, I think that you're going to see more and more of that, and we're going to delve into looking at some of these other accounts at the DOT, trying to root out some of that money that's, believe it or not, hidden in some of these spots at the DOT, and using that money for road and bridge infrastructure, and focusing on using the bonding money for those issues.
Obviously, I'm not on the inside know with what the House is doing, but I would not be surprised to see them avoid putting together any kind of bonding package or proposals, or have hearings on proposals. But then again, I wouldn't be surprised that at the end of the session that something pops up as part of some sort of an agreement with the Senate, because they probably will be pushing for something over on the Senate side.
It's usually what happens. But I can tell you that just looking at the list of bills that have been introduced, you'll find, in the House anyway, a huge list of bridge infrastructure projects and road projects for bonding. So I think that's going to be the main focus.
We've had questions in past weeks about the issues surrounding tax policy, and whether or not there might be some tax legislation of various types. For example, we've had questions from veterans wondering about exemptions for veterans from certain kinds of taxes. We had the question earlier about property tax freeze or other exemptions. So let's talk generally about tax policy and what we might see in this session. Representative or Senator Eno?
Sure. Well, actually, just today, the Senate took up House File 6, I believe it was, which is a tax conformity. That's a $20 million tax cut for people all across Minnesota. Things like educator in classroom expense deductions, things like that. So
our viewers understand what that means. When we talk about conformity, we're talking about conformity with federal tax law.
Correct.
Yes, where it's allowed at the federal level, but Minnesota hasn't changed its law yet to do that at the state level. So it was until the governor signs this bill, and I'm sure he will. You could deduct it on your federal taxes, but you would still be taxed on the state tax, the whatever form you file for the state. We passed that out of the Senate today. The House previously passed it. It's going to the governor. I would imagine he'll sign it. There's no reason why he wouldn't. That's a $20 million tax cut across Minnesota, all demographics.
Not just businesses like
Right.
they try to say, sometimes that we work just on cutting taxes on business. This really does come to the average Minnesotan.
Yep. We talked about earlier, there's the proposal to phase out the tax on Social Security benefits. I would hope that would get some discussion this year. We all know people that spend 6, 7 months down in Arizona or Florida or wherever, and they come back up here in the summertime. Some of that has to do with weather. A lot of it sometimes has to do with taxes, quite frankly. Let's be honest. That and military retirees, I know those bills exist. I've seen them floating around. I don't know if they've been introduced yet. I would expect that they would get hearings if they show up in a final package. That's yet to be determined. That's, I guess, right off the top of my head, those are the things I'm aware of right now.
Representative Dettmer has been working on this retired veterans benefits issue for a long, long time. I think this is the year that that's going to happen.
Let's talk about process. I believe the Speaker of the House announced today some deadlines. How do those deadlines affect the activity at the legislature? What's going to be happening in the next weeks, pointing towards eventual departure from St. Paul?
Well, the deadlines are pretty much the same as they've always been, set at the same times. We have to be out of here by after the third week in May. I mean, they always kind of fall down about the same time. But the issue is we're waiting for the February forecast to come out. We're also waiting for the governor's budget to come out. So right now we're doing some things that we can do, like the tax conformity bill. There's a flood relief bill, a flood disaster bill that we're going to be doing. That went through Ways and Means last night, and that's going to be progressing next week in the Minnesota House. We're trying to get some of those things done that have to get done. But we can't do a lot right now. So you'll see a lot of the committees having informational hearings, doing department overviews, those kinds of things right now. There's not a lot of bills that are being heard. So those are the things that are happening right now until we see what the governor's budget is going to be and until we get that February forecast.
Senator Nenow, process, deadlines in the Senate?
Yeah, I think the first deadline was March 24th, and then second deadline was about a week later, and third deadline was it. And all that is you've got to get through your first committee in one of the houses, and then you've got to get through all your committees, and et cetera. That's what those deadlines are. They're not really hard deadlines. There's always ways around, but that's kind of what we set for expectations as far as getting bills to move through the process. And Representative Hackbarth is exactly right. We really can't dig down deep into setting the budget until we get the February forecast, because that is, right now, all we have is estimates. And the February forecast is going to be the set in stone number that we use for creating the budget. So once that comes out, the governor's budget comes out on Tuesday. But once the February forecast comes out, then we'll know what the governor's priorities are, and we'll know what the final number is that we have to deal with for a budget, and then we can really actually get into passing and working on these major budget provisions. And HHS and K-12 are about 2/3 of the whole budget, so that's a big chunk of where we'll be spending the money. Health and Human Services, HHS.
One of the great features about this program is our viewers are engaged. And we have a viewer from Bemidji who wants to, I'm not sure if correct our legislators is the correct terminology, but at least wants to provide some additional information. So I'm just going to read her comment, sure, and then we'll get some reaction from both of you. This viewer asks the panel to be aware of the fact that LGA is essential to cities with low tax capacity. In Bemidji, 50% of our properties are tax exempt. LGA amounts to about 32% of our budget. Public safety, police, fire costs us 42%, and the LGA doesn't cover it. Growing cities like ours need to have levy increases in order to capture the growth in tax capacity. She's also got a point here about the wheelage tax. Maybe we'll get to that. But let's talk about the LGA issue. Representative Hackbarth, any comments on that or thoughts on that?
Well, I think there needs to be an adjustment to the LGA. I'm not saying that we should do away with LGA, and I don't think that we made a comment like that. But there was an increase in the LGA the last biennium. And then property taxes also went up, and that was the point that we were trying to make. We tried to help all cities. We gave them an increase in their LGA, and then plus local units of government still spent more money and still had to increase taxes on their property owners in their area, and that's the point that we're trying to make. Even with the people that brought this forward, the Democrats, I have to say, brought this forward as a proposal, like Senator Nenow said. This was supposed to reduce property taxes, and it was supposed to keep them from increasing property taxes, and that didn't happen. They increased property taxes anyway.
If the caller's point is that each city is unique, I would agree. And we're talking in broad generalities here. There are cities that do not get local government aid. There are some that don't get LGA at all.
Most of them.
And most of those are suburban, and so every city is going to be unique, and it doesn't mean that every city is exactly the way we describe. But globally, across the state, the state put a lot of money into that local government aid, more money, and we also gave additional local taxing authority to the local units, counties and cities and such. And the point was that even when we did that, the property taxes at large across the state went up. Some counties, some cities did, like Anoka, repealed their wheelage tax. So every situation is going to be unique.
And there's some cities in my district that even though they didn't increase their property taxes, and they didn't need to.
The viewer's point on the wheelage tax is that counties get the wheelage tax. They also get the ability to implement a sales tax for transportation without a referendum, but cities don't get anything from that. And if either of you care to react to that, or
that's true.
Right.
That is true. And cities are one part, or township, depending on where you live. City, township is one part of your property tax. School district is another. County, there may be some special taxing districts that you reside in.
the city benefit may be where county roads go into cities
Yeah.
and those kinds of areas. So anyway, thanks to that viewer for giving us some additional information. We have another question from a viewer who wants to know, is the legislature going to go home on time this year? So what do you think? Representative Hackbarth?
I think we'll go home on time. Only the governor can call a special session. I think that there'll be an agreement at the end. I think we've been getting along pretty well, actually. The Republicans control the House, the Democrats control the Senate, and so far we've been getting along pretty well. And I think there will be an agreement in the end. I think the Senate knows where we're at in the House, and I think the House knows where the Senate's at. I still believe that we'll get out on time and we'll have a global agreement at the end. And I still don't think there'll be a gas tax involved in that.
Senator Nino, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, if I were to bet $1 on what's going to happen, I'd say we're going to be here close to the very end, but we won't end up having to have a special session. Just kind of looking at the dynamics, I think that the Speaker of the House and the Majority Leader in the Senate get along better than maybe some other versions of relationships that are there with the governor.
And this is the year that we have to balance the budget, and the entire Senate is up for re-election next time. They don't want to be going into an election, being in the majority, the Democrats, and having to go to a special session without balancing the budget. They don't want to face that.
Might be a practical detail.
Yeah.
So a viewer from Alexandria wants to know, Governor Dayton wants to give a tax credit to teachers because they spend their own money on supplies. Caller feels the teachers shouldn't have to do that when schools are publicly funded. I think the point of the viewer is that those expenditures should be covered by the state rather than teachers having to spend for them. Any thoughts on that issue?
Well, I would agree. A teacher shouldn't have to pay out of pocket, to any large extent. There's always the occasional incident. We all have these incidental expenses at work, but I don't think a teacher should have to spend money out of pocket. We did, in the bill that I referenced earlier, passed today, that with the tax conformity, allowed for those deductions for the out-of-pocket expenses in the classroom,
Yep.
But I don't believe it was a credit.
Viewer from Alexandria notes that there are shortages in healthcare employees, especially in nursing, and wonders about whether or not the legislature should be helping fund educating nurses. Of course, the governor made an announcement, I believe, yesterday about proposed additional expenditures to assist in the training of new doctors. So this topic does have some legs. Let's talk a little bit about it. Representative Hackbarth?
I shouldn't be talking about it because I don't know that much about it. I really don't. So.
Well,
This is Health and Human Services.
Yeah.
You, Senator Nino. Yeah,
I met today, I mentioned this earlier, I met today with a couple of representatives from the long-term care initiative, and this is one of the things that's on their agenda for the session, is to create some incentives to make it easier for people to get into and get through their training. We do have a challenge in the nursing field in general. I mean, the average age of nurses is going up and up. I think it's about, I forget the number, but I want to say it's almost like 60 years old now. The average age of nurses is getting older and older and older, and we don't really have the infrastructure to backfill all of those positions. We've got bottlenecks, and the challenge is particularly difficult for nursing homes because they can't, and I don't want to get into funding policy, but because of the way we fund nursing homes, they can't pay the wages that a nurse can get paid at a hospital. So if you have a 4-year nursing degree and you're working at a nursing home, you can go across the street to the hospital and they'll snatch you up and pay you $5, $10, $15 an hour more. And if you've got a 2-year nursing degree working at the nursing home, you've got a strong incentive to finish that out. So you can go across the street, get your 4-year degree, go to the hospital, and get paid $20,000 or $30,000 a year more. So there is a real challenge there, and it's even worse in greater Minnesota.
And another thing that I'd like to add to that, Senator Nina, is there's been a bill introduced for a community medics, I believe it's called, community medics, where EMTs and paramedics that exist now can do some of these things at some of the nursing homes and things like that, I think. Is that how
yeah, there's, I haven't seen the specifics, but there's been a number of proposals along that way.
To try to fill that gap.
And that really has been anyway, those kinds of proposals have been promoted by the more rural legislators, because that's really where there's a significant problem.
Governor's proposal to fund Doctors Go Anywhere, do you think? Hard to tell.
Hard to tell. You know, if it's in his budget, that's on the table. You know, we'll see on Tuesday what he's got.
All right. I want to thank our truncated panel tonight for joining us. I want to thank you, our viewers, for being with us this evening as we discussed public policy issues that affect the people of the state of Minnesota. I want to invite you to be back with us again next week and all the weeks that follow, when we will be here with your legislators to answer your questions. Thank you and good night.
There's much more about Your Legislators online at pioneer.org/yourlegislators. Find out more about the history of the program, who's been a guest, and watch all of our past episodes. There's also a photo gallery, informative links, and much more. You can also get involved and stay in touch by following us on Twitter and join us in the discussion on our Facebook page. Thank you for watching Your Legislators. Major funding for Your Legislators is provided by Move Minnesota, a statewide coalition fighting for a 10-year commitment to fixing our dire transportation needs. A safe, reliable transportation system strengthens Minnesota's economy. Join the conversation at movemn.org. Additional funding provided by Flaherty and Hood has provided quality legal and legislative services to clients in greater Minnesota for more than 20 years. Our legal team focuses on municipal employment and environmental law, while our lobbyists energetically represent clients at the state capitol. Online at flaherty-hood.com. MAPE members, making Minnesota clean waters safe communities, quality education, and veterans care happen. We work hard for Minnesotans.